Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be showing y'all how to make homemade sauerkraut. Homemade sauerkraut is definitely one of the easiest ferments that you can make at home. Basically you need cabbage and salt and thyme. That's it. You can do any kind of add-ins you want. Today I'm going to be making apple sauerkraut. That's what I made last time and it went over really well, so that's what I'm going to make again. My recipe, I typically do almost a gallon because my husband loves the stuff and I can make a big batch of it and not have to make it again for a month or so, a couple months. So I prefer doing it that way. It keeps really well in the refrigerator, so I can make it now and not have to worry about keeping up with it. I can just make some more when I see my jar starting to get about halfway empty. I can start a new batch, because doing a batch this big, plus our house is really cool, it takes this about a month to ferment to the sourness that we like it. So keep that in mind. If you're going to do a big batch, it will take longer to ferment, and especially if your house is cooler. Our house is 69, 70 degrees all the time, so it takes longer to ferment in a cooler environment. So first thing, I took these outer leaves off and rinsed them real good with water to wash all the any kind of dirt or anything on them off. And I'm going to save those, and I'll show you what to do with those later. But first I am going to core my spinach and slice it thinly. I like it to be really thin. You don't have to do it super thin, you can do it chunkier, but typically it's traditionally done thinner. So I'm going to slice it pretty thin, and then we'll do the apples. Okay, so that is all the cabbage. Another reason that I like to be able to do this only once every few months is because it does take a while to cut it off by hand. I have heard that people do it in a food processor to make it a lot quicker if you have a food processor that has a slicer on it, but I don't have one of those, so I just cut it up by hand. And now we're going to do the apples. I've already washed them. I did wash them really well, since apples come coated in wax. But I'm just gonna core them and chop them up pretty finely and add them in. Okay, so I have my 3 heads of cabbage and my 2 apples. It's about 6 pounds of cabbage. That's about what I do for my gallon jar. And then I have the 2 medium apples. And to this I am going to add four tablespoons of salt. Now I do about 3/4 of a tablespoon per pound of cabbage. What I've seen recommended is 1.5 to 2 teaspoons. So what I'm doing is a little bit more than that, because 2 teaspoons would be 2/3 of a tablespoon. So I'm doing a little bit more than that, but we like it. It does not taste salty once it's fermented, and I found that this is actually sea salt that we refilled this container with. It doesn't taste as salty to me as a regular iodized salt, so it works for us. So I'm going to do 4 tablespoons of salt. Okay, and I'm just gonna use my hands and knead this in here really, really well. You wanna get the salt coating all of the cabbage, and it's gonna start to weep, and that is what makes your brine. The juices that come out of the cabbage combined with the salt is what makes your brine. So you wanna get it all kind of smashed and mixed all up together like this. Now I have this little tamper that goes with my blender. You could use a potato masher, anything you have, and I'm just gonna start mashing it, and that helps to get more of those juices coming out of the cabbage. Okay, and I'm just gonna let this sit probably about 5 or 10 minutes and really let those juices start. So you can see already it's getting really liquidy looking. It doesn't have a whole lot of brine down in there yet, but as it sits, the salt will pull out more and more of that water and liquid out of the cabbage to make the brine. So I'm just gonna let it sit, let that salt work for a few minutes, and we will come back and pack it in our jar. Alright, so this has been sitting about 10 minutes. I don't have a lot of brine going yet, but I am going to go ahead and pack it into my jar and let it do its thing. And I'm using my tamper here to really mash it down good in that jar. I want it to be packed tight. You want everything to be below the brine level, because anything that's out of the brine will be exposed to oxygen and mold. So the point is you want all the cabbage to be under the brine so that it doesn't mold. Okay, and I can see the brine is almost up to the top here when I'm mashing it down. Okay. Alright, so I told y'all at the beginning that I was going to show y'all what to do with these cabbage leaves. So I'm going to take a few of these bigger ones and fold them up and push them down on top of the sauerkraut to keep all the chopped sauerkraut down in the brine. Okay, and so that is pretty much it. I'm gonna watch this for to make sure that the brine does rise up above the leaves here. And I probably will end up getting a little jar or something to weight these down because they're not wanting to really stay very well. If it doesn't make as much brine that I want to really cover the leaves well, I will just add some water into it to cover. Because I have a little extra salt in there, I don't have to worry about adding more salt. But that is it. That is the process of making sauerkraut. It is now ready to sit and ferment until it's however fermented that you like it, however sour you like it. Like I said, we do ours for about a month, and it gets a really sour, almost pickled taste to it. It's not pickled like a pickle out the refrigerator, but it's very much like that taste, very similar to a pickled taste. Full of all those beneficial bacteria, probiotic bacterias. And then I will just put a lid loosely on it. I don't do it really super tight because it is possible that it will make enough brine that it will run over the top. So with that in mind, make sure you put your container of sauerkraut, wherever it is fermenting on your counter, in a container like this to catch any brine that overflows, because it will make a big huge mess if you don't. Ask me how I know. So make sure you put it in a container to catch any overflow of the brine or anything that would happen to come out of your jar. And when you are done, this is about what it will look like. This is all that's left from my last batch that I made. It's gonna be kind of translucent a little bit, and definitely you can tell it's not green, it's more like yellow and clear. That's what it looks like when it's done. So that's what you're going for. And you'll just have to start tasting it, depending on how warm your house is. If your house is really cool like mine, I would wait about 3 weeks and start tasting it to see if it's the sourness that you like. If your house is super warm, you know, maybe 2 weeks. It might not take very long. And then once it is done fermenting, you just stick it in the fridge. It will keep in there for months and months. That's why I do a big batch. It doesn't go bad in the refrigerator. It would take a really long time, probably like over 6 months to go bad in the refrigerator. So I hope you'll give it a try. It is super easy, one of the easiest ferments you could possibly do. You mix it up and basically forget about it. I will write the date on top of it so I don't forget when I started it. And then when it's done, pop it in the fridge and have it as a healthy little probiotic side for our meals. Thank you for joining, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. But as it sits, the salt will pour out. But as it sits, the salt will pour. I don't have a. So this has been okay. If your house is really cool like mine, I would wait 3 or 4 weeks